Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. And may the peace, mercy, and blessings of Allah be upon you.
So glad to be here for this.
Yeah, welcome to today's deep dive. I want you to just imagine for a second that you're standing in a crowd of like tens of thousands of people.
Just a massive sea of humanity.
Exactly. It's a day of huge communal celebration. Everyone is wearing their absolute best clothes. The atmosphere is just electric, and people are greeting each other.
Feeling that real sense of spiritual upliftment.
Right. And then the speaker stands up, looks out at this vast ocean of people, and instead of giving, a generic feel-good speech, asks a question that completely stops your heart.
Yeah, total paradigm shift.
He asks, has the news of the overwhelming catastrophe reached you?
Which is just, it completely shatters that festive illusion right there.
It really does.
It forces every single person in that massive crowd to suddenly zoom out from their immediate, comfortable reality, right, and confront the absolute infinite.
And the crazy thing is, that is exactly how the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, chose to address the masses.
Deliberately.
Yeah, deliberately. When we look at the historical context of Surah Al-Ghaashiya, which is chapter 88 of the Quran, we're looking at a text that was strategically deployed.
100%.
Like if you look at the classical hadith corpus texts like Sahih Muslim or the Muwatta of Imam Malik, you see this very consistent pattern.
Right. The Prophet frequently recited this specific surah.
Yes, almost always paired with Surah Allah during the weekly Friday Jumu'ah prayers and those massive biannual Eid prayers.
And we have to remember, those were the absolute largest gatherings in early Islamic society.
Just maximum capacity crowds.
Exactly. You have the maximum number of people standing shoulder to shoulder. So choosing these two chapters, it wasn't just some, random liturgical preference.
It was intentional.
It was a masterclass in divine pedagogy. Because Surah Allah, the chapter right before it, it provides this very concise, universal formula for spiritual purification.
It basically lays out the methodology for achieving ultimate success.
Right. But then, right on its heels, comes Surah Al-Ghaashiya,
which vividly paints the eternal, unavoidable consequences of, well, whether or not you actually applied that formula.
It leaves absolutely no gray area.
None. It completely bifurcates humanity into two camps based on their response. And the way it commands your attention right out of the gate is just fascinating.
The rhetorical psychology is brilliant. The very first word is the namesake of the Surah Al-Ghaashiya,
which comes from a root word meaning to envelop, right? Or to completely cover.
Yes, the root is Ghaashiya. And classical exegetes, like Al-Tabari, they explain that Al-Ghaashiya serves as a proper name for the Day of Judgment.
Because of the physical imagery of that word.
Exactly. If a blanket is thrown over you, you are enveloped. But, this isn't a localized covering.
It's not just a small blanket.
No. It implies an event whose terrors will suddenly, inescapably, and entirely envelop all of creation simultaneously. It's a 360-degree reality.
You literally can't outrun something that covers the entirety of existence. It overwrites all those little worldly hierarchies we obsess over.
Oh, totally.
Like if you're a billionaire or a head of state or a celebrity, none of that gives you a sanctuary from an envelopment.
The wealth means nothing in that moment.
Right. It obliterates all those carefully constructed illusions we use to, distract ourselves from our own mortality.
And what's amazing is that totalizing psychological impact, it's delivered with such an interesting linguistic subtlety.
Oh, right. The verb choice.
Yeah. Modern linguistic scholars like Nouman Ali Khan really focus on this. Look at the verb used in that opening question. Has there reached you the report of the overwhelming event?
Okay, yeah.
The Arabic verb used for has there reached you is ata.
Wait, I always thought the standard Arabic word for something arriving or coming was ja.
Well, it is. Both ja and ata technically mean to come. But their morphology carries completed emotional and physical weights.
How so?
So ja is heavy. It implies a physically burdensome, catastrophic, or forceful arrival.
Like a heavy impact.
Exactly. It's the linguistic equivalent of a SWAT team kicking your front door off its hinges.
Oh, wow. So if the Quran had used ja there, it would imply the catastrophe is actively crushing you in this very moment.
Precisely. But instead it uses ata. And ata is much softer, it's lighter.
It's more gentle.
Right, it's communicative and invitational. Think of it like a registered letter arriving in the mail.
Or like a firm but gentle knock on the door of your consciousness.
That's a great way to put it. The universe isn't kicking your door down just yet. It's basically asking, Are you aware of this? Have you seriously considered what is inevitably approaching?
It's a soft rhetorical knock before delivering this incredibly heavy, inescapable truth.
Which makes the opening so much more haunting, honestly.
It really does. It's like an urgent whisper rather than someone shouting at you. And that soft knock demands your full cognitive presence for the terrifying paradox that comes next.
Verses 2 and 3.
Yeah, the narrative shifts to describe the state of a specific group of people on that day. It says, some faces, that day, will be downcast, laboring hard, weary.
The Arabic terms there are Ghashiya and Amilatun Nasiba.
Let's unpack those because they are heavy.
Very heavy. So Ghashiya denotes a state of deep humiliation and subjugation.
Like the total deflation of worldly ego.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the phrase Amilatun Nasiba is where the theological weight truly drops. It describes individuals who are completely, thoroughly exhausted.
They're deeply depleted from intense, continuous labor.
Right.
But the tragedy, and this is the quote of it, is that this exhaustion is entirely without reward. And this is a concept that requires us to really pause.
Because it goes against everything we're taught.
It cuts so deeply against the grain of how we, view effort today. When I was reading the classical commentary on this, specifically Al-Qurtubi's monumental tafsir.
Oh, the story of Umar.
Yes. He shares this historical report about the second caliph of Islam, Umar bin al-Khattab, and it just completely reframes what hard work actually means.
It's honestly one of the most sobering moments in early Islamic history.
Set the scene for us.
So Umar is traveling through the region of Syria, and he stops near the hermitage of a Christian monk. And this monk has dedicated his entire existence to extreme asceticism.
And we really need to visualize what that looked like back then. This isn't just someone meditating quietly on weekends.
No, this is severe, punishing self-deprivation.
We're talking about a man living in the absolute harshness of the desert, likely emaciated, wearing rough, scratchy garments.
Completely isolating himself from society.
Right, and engaging in immense, continuous, physically agonizing rituals of worship for decades.
He has surrendered literally every worldly comfort.
And Umar, the caliph, who is a man who commands a vast empire, a man known for his immense physical strength and emotional stoicism, he looks at this frail, exhausted monk.
And he just begins to weep profusely.
Which is wild. His companions ask him why he is crying, and Umar just recites these exact verses. Laboring hard, weary, they will enter to burn in an intensely hot fire.
Umar is weeping because he sees a human being who has given literally everything they have.
The sheer sincerity of the physical effort is undeniable there.
But Umar realizes with absolute clarity that all of that immense sacrifice will ultimately end in the hellfire.
Because it lacked the correct foundation.
Exactly. It lacked orthodox monotheism, what the Islamic tradition calls tawheed. The spiritual compass was just pointing in the wrong direction.
Ibn Kathir actually corroborates this understanding too, right?
Yeah, he notes that the companion Ibn Abbas interpreted this verse specifically to refer to those who performed numerous exhausting deeds in the worldly life.
Whether that's corrupt worship or just, an obsession with worldly accumulation.
But because they lacked the theological bedrock of belief in Allah and his messengers, all that effort just evaporates into nothingness.
It's like revving an engine to 10,000 RPMs, but the transmission is entirely disconnected.
You burn out the engine, but you don't actually go anywhere.
And think about what that means for you, the modern listener. I mean, we live in a society that is absolutely intoxicated by hustle culture.
Oh, we totally commodify exhaustion.
We celebrate the person who sleeps 4 hours a night, who grinds constantly, who sacrifices their health and relationships to climb the corporate ladder or build an empire.
We have this deep-seated cultural assumption that sheer physical and mental exhaustion is inherently virtuous.
That if you just work hard enough, you somehow deserve ultimate success.
It's the illusion of intrinsic value in labor. We assume the universe just owes us a return on our sweat equity.
But this surah steps in and completely shatters that illusion. It delivers this chilling reality check. Running at maximum velocity in the wrong direction is the ultimate human tragedy.
Effort alone has zero intrinsic value in the divine scales if it's untethered from the Creator.
You can be the hardest working person in your city, you can exhaust yourself for 80 years, but if your intentions are divorced from divine guidance, it amounts to a milatun nasiba.
You are literally just tiring yourself out for the fire.
And Al-Qurtubi points out a secondary, even darker layer to this weariness, doesn't he?
He does. The exhaustion isn't just a description of their misguided worldly life. This weariness actually extends into their eschatological reality, their afterlife.
So the wretched don't find rest in hell.
No, they are subjected to continuous, agonizing physical labor as part of their eternal punishment. Their worldly exhaustion transitions seamlessly into eternal exhaustion.
Man, which brings us to the physical environment that corresponds to this spiritual deprivation, detailed in verses 4 through 7.
The sensory precision of these verses is terrifying.
It really is. It says they will enter a scorching fire called Hamiyah. They will be given drink from a boiling spring called Aniyah.
And their food will be a poisonous, thorny plant called dari.
Let's unpack the mechanics of that environment, because the Quran isn't just throwing out scary adjectives randomly.
Right, so Hamiyah is an enveloping, scorching heat. It poetically mirrors the enveloping nature of their earthly heedlessness, the Ghaashiya we discussed at the very beginning.
Ah, so they wrap themselves in ignorance in this world, so they are wrapped in scorching heat in the next.
Exactly. And then there is the hydration, Anaya. This refers to a spring where the water has reached its absolute maximum boiling point.
So it's not just hot water, it's water that has absorbed the maximum amount of thermal energy possible.
Imagine the physiological reality of that.
You are in a scorching fire, experiencing the most severe cellular dehydration and thirst imaginable.
The biological drive to drink is just overwhelming.
But the only liquid available is anaya, so taking a drink doesn't quench the thirst. It causes immediate catastrophic thermal trauma to the internal
The
organs.
cure is literally a weapon.
And the sustenance operates on the exact same horrific logic. The verse identifies their food as dari.
Ibn Kathir notes that classical linguists identify daris as ash shibrik.
Which is what, exactly?
It's a foul, highly toxic, heavily thorny plant found in the Arabian desert. It is so noxious, and its thorns are so vicious, that even desperate, starving camels will instinctively avoid it once it dries.
Wow. It is the ultimate anti-food.
Totally.
But wait, hold on. I need to push back on this based on the sources. You're saying their food is exclusively this dry, thorny plant.
Right.
But if we look at Surah Al-Ghaashiya, chapter 69, verse 36, it explicitly says the food of the people of hell is exclusively gizlin, which is foul pus or the washing of wounds.
Yeah, that's a famous theological puzzle.
Right. Those are two completely different physical substances. How did classical scholars resolve that? Because they can't both be the exclusive food at the same time in the same place.
It's a profound textual question, and classical exegetes deeply debated the mechanics of the afterlife to figure it out.
And what did Al-Qurtubi say?
Al-Qurtubi offers a brilliant resolution by explaining that hell is not a monolith. It's an incredibly complex, highly stratified reality.
So it's layered.
Yes, it possesses diverse topological levels and distinct penal regions. And crucially, the people entering it are not a homogeneous group.
Ah, so the environment actually adapts to the inhabitant.
Exactly. Different categories of sinners will be subjected to entirely different ecosystems of torment based on the specific psychological profile and severity of their worldly transgression.
That makes so much sense. So the arrogant tyrant does not inhabit the same region as the hypocrite or the casual sinner.
Right. So one specific region or group, perhaps those whose worldly actions were sharp and harmful to others, experiences the thorny dari.
While another region experiences the gizlin.
Exactly. It is a highly customized, intensely proportionate reality.
And that proportionality is flawlessly summarized in verse 7, which honestly might be the most psychologically devastating sentence in this entire narrative.
It will neither nourish nor satisfy hunger.
Yes, the absolute deprivation of utility. The ultimate torment here isn't just the physical pain of swallowing thorns, it's the sheer mind-breaking uselessness of the act.
It's pure futility.
Think about the poetic justice of this mechanism. In the worldly life, these individuals engaged in exhausting actions that yielded absolutely no spiritual nourishment.
Their efforts were futile.
So, in their eternal life, they are forced to consume a substance that yields absolutely no physical nourishment or relief. It doesn't build their bodies, and it doesn't alleviate the pain of hunger.
Useless effort in the worldly life is met with useless sustenance in the eternal life.
It is the purest, most terrifying manifestation of futility.
And the psychological weight of that futility is suffocating. But, this is exactly where the rhetorical brilliance of Surah Al-Ghaashiya reveals itself.
It pivots, right?
Huge pivot. Having pushed the human mind to the absolute brink of despair, demonstrating the nightmare of unrewarded exhaustion, the text executes a sudden, breathtaking shift.
We move entirely away from the heat and the futility.
And we are introduced to the mirror opposite, the architecture of paradise, and the ultimate validation of unseen sacrifices.
It's like stepping out of a suffocating, blinding furnace into the most pristine, cool, fragrant breeze imaginable.
Verses 8 and 9 declare, "Other faces that day will show pleasure. With their effort they are satisfied."
The Arabic descriptors here are naima and radia. Let's look closely at the biological and psychological implications of those words.
Yeah, let's contrast them. Earlier, we saw the wretched described as Ghashiya, humiliated, downcast, their faces contorted with stress.
And now the believers are described as naima.
Right. This word denotes a radiant, joyful softness. It indicates the complete physiological relaxation of the facial muscles and the body.
So the chronic, cortisol-soaked stress of the worldly life has been permanently eradicated from their biology.
Completely wiped out. And then you have radia, meaning deeply satisfied or pleased.
Modern scholars like Yasir Qadhi emphasize the depth of what they are actually satisfied with.
Because the verse says they are satisfied with their sayha, their past worldly effort.
So while the disbelievers are defined by their eternal exhaustion, nasiba, the believers are defined by an unshakable psychological peace regarding the exhaustion they endured in the past.
Nouman Ali Khan points out that this linguistic construction indicates a definitive, permanent transition.
Because these believers, during their earthly lives, they weren't just sitting around in luxury.
No, they likely faced intense physical exhaustion. They faced persecution, financial anxiety, the daily grinding friction of resisting temptation and adhering to divine law.
They were tired.
But upon resurrection, the moment they see their reward, all of that accumulated worldly anxiety permanently dissipates.
Just think about what that actually feels like. Imagine you are working on a grueling, physically and emotionally taxing project.
And you're doing it in complete secrecy.
Exactly. Nobody is praising you. In fact, people in your life might be mocking you, telling you you're wasting your time.
You endure this thankless grind for decades.
But then one day, you are brought into a grand hall, and the highest possible authority, the creator of the universe, publicly unveils your project.
Declares it a flawless masterpiece.
And grants you an infinite, unimaginable reward for it. That feeling of relief, that massive sigh where your shoulders finally drop and you think to yourself, it was worth it.
Every late night, every tear, every moment of doubt, it was all worth it.
That profound, soul-deep vindication is radia.
It is the ultimate divine endorsement of delayed gratification. It validates every single quiet abstention from a sin that nobody else knew about.
It validates every hidden charity, every lonely prayer in the middle of the night.
The underlying lesson here is that prioritizing immediate worldly comfort is frequently the enemy of eternal rest.
Wow.
True, enduring satisfaction is uniquely reserved for that eschatological moment when you realize the omniscient creator recorded and accepted your hidden struggles.
And once that internal psychological piece is established, the surah expands the lens. Verses 10 through 16 show us the external environment designed to perfectly match this internal state.
It's the sensory and psychological ecosystem of Jannah, or paradise.
It begins by situating these believers in Jannatun Aliyah elevated gardens.
Classical scholar Ibn Kathir notes that this elevation is dual-natured.
Okay, how so?
It's physically high in its geographic topography, providing majestic, sweeping vantage points away from any low-lying dust or heat. But it is also infinitely elevated in its spiritual status, its honor, and its exclusivity.
But the feature of this environment that truly fascinates me, and the one I think speaks most directly to our modern psychological condition, is verse 11.
Wherein they will hear no unsuitable speech.
Right. The Arabic word used is log.
Law is a comprehensive term. It encompasses falsehood, gossip, slander, vanity, meaningless chatter, and just general chaotic auditory noise.
And why is the absence of noise presented as one of the ultimate rewards of paradise? I mean, just look at the world we live in right now.
It's overwhelmingly loud.
We are totally saturated with cognitive dissonance. We are bombarded relentlessly by the 247 news cycle, the engineered outrage of social media algorithms.
The petty backbiting in office politics.
Exactly. The sheer verbal violence that human beings inflict on one another every single day, just processing the ambient toxicity of our environment, requires massive amounts of mental energy.
It is exhausting. It creates a state of perpetual hypervigilance.
You are always waiting for the next argument, the next insult, the next scam.
So, to transition into an environment of absolute pristine silence, a silence punctuated only by what Al-Tabari describes as greetings of absolute peace, salam is to enter an environment of complete emotional safety.
You can finally lower your defenses.
Nobody is trying to manipulate you.
Nobody is arguing in bad faith. Nobody is tearing down your reputation. It is pure, unadulterated psychological peace.
And that profound psychological relief extends directly into the physical ergonomics of the environment.
Right. Verses 12 and 13 describe flowing springs, and Surah Marfu'ah raised thrones or couches.
Fakhr al-Din al-Razi, in his monumental philosophical exegesis Tafsir al-Kabir, unpacks the spatial mechanics of this.
What does he say?
He explains that these couches are elevated specifically to grant the inhabitant an expansive, unhindered, panoramic view of their vast heavenly dominion.
So it's an architectural design centered on mastery and the deep appreciation of the divine reward. You aren't staring at a wall, you are taking in a cosmic estate.
And Ibn Kathir adds an operational detail to these thrones that makes paradise sound like the ultimate, divinely perfected smart home.
Oh, I love this part.
He notes that these lofty couches dynamically lower themselves with perfect grace whenever a resident of paradise wishes to sit down.
And once they are seated, the couches automatically rise back up to that elevated vantage point.
It's a physical manifestation of an environment that perfectly and intelligently anticipates and serves human desire without requiring a single ounce of muscular strain.
It is the absolute negation of the physical weariness we saw in the first half of the surah. In hell, everything demands agonizing labor.
But in heaven, the environment itself labors to serve you.
This frictionless reality is further detailed in verses 14, 15, and 16, which describe the localized domestic comforts.
The perfectly arranged goblets, akwab, the precisely lined up cushions, namarik, and the beautifully spread out rich carpets, zarabi.
Now, when you read about cups and cushions, it's easy to just dismiss it as generic luxury.
Sure.
But Al-Qurtubi extracts a brilliant, highly practical, worldly takeaway from these specific verses.
He looks at these perfectly arranged carpets and cushions and argues that this isn't just a description of heavenly interior design.
It's a divine blueprint for domestic order and hospitality in our worldly homes.
Right. The perfection of Jannah implies that shared household items in this life should be neat, orderly, and placed conveniently for the ease and comfort of others.
It serves as a model for Islamic social etiquette and creating harmony within the family unit.
It's really about negating the worldly curse of entropy.
Yes, think about it. In this world, if you want to host your friends for dinner, what happens? You have to scrub the floors, arrange the furniture, wash the dishes, cook the food.
It requires immense preparation, and preparation requires labor.
And the moment the guests leave, entropy takes over again. The house is a mess and you have to clean it all over again.
It never ends.
But in Jannah, the environment exists in a perpetual state of perfect readiness. There is zero entropy. Dust doesn't gather. Cushions don't lose their shape. Drinks don't spill.
It is a state of eternal, effortless harmony.
So if we zoom out and look at the structure of the surah so far, the contrast is absolute.
The first section presented an ecosystem of maximum chaos, thermal trauma, and painfully useless effort.
In the second section presents an ecosystem of supreme aesthetic order, absolute emotional safety, and entirely validated effort.
But establishing this dichotomy naturally raises a massive existential question.
Yeah, the Quran anticipates the listener's mind asking, okay, I see the two destinations, but how does a human being living in the messy, confusing reality of the present ensure they end up on the raised thrones rather than consuming the thorny plants?
Right. What is the epistemological bridge between our mundane Tuesday morning and that eternal eschatological reality?
Exactly. To answer that, Surah Al-Ghaashiya executes another breathtaking pedagogical maneuver in his third movement.
It pulls the human gaze entirely away from the unseen, terrifying future and grounds it immediately, intensely, in the tangible, empirical present.
It demands that we observe the natural world around us. Verses 17 through 20 ask four profound, rapid-fire rhetorical questions.
Then do they not look at the camels, how they are created, and at the sky, how it is raised, and at the mountains, how they are erected, and at the earth, how it is spread out?
To truly appreciate the brilliance of this sequence, we have to understand why the Quran selected these four specific items out of all the phenomena in the universe.
And Fakhr al-Razi constructs a multidimensional spatial model to explain this.
Based on the lived phenomenal reality of the primary historical recipients of this revelation, the Bedouin Arabs traversing the vast, unforgiving Arabian desert.
We have to mentally put ourselves in the shoes of a solitary desert traveler in the 7th century.
You are miles away from any settlement. What are the inescapable, constant physical realities that define your entire field of existence?
Razi identifies four cardinal vectors of experience. First, the vehicle immediately below you and upon which your survival depends, the camel.
Okay, the camel.
Second, the vast, unbroken canopy directly above you, the expansive sky. Third, the periphery beside you, anchoring your horizon, the towering mountains.
And fourth, the foundation directly beneath your feet, the earth over which you travel.
The Quran is not speaking in abstract philosophical terms. It is addressing the immediate, empirically verifiable 3D world of the listener.
And the scholar Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya, in his masterwork Miftar al-Sa'ada, offers an incredibly profound psychological insight into why these natural phenomena serve as the ultimate teleological proof of God.
He argues that these specific items perfectly bypass the human ego.
Yes, if the Quran commanded us to look at piles of gold or sprawling empires or immense human-built castles to find God, those objects instantly spark our worldly desires.
They trigger greed, lust, envy, and tribal rivalry.
Our ego gets in the way of our intellect, but a camel, the open sky, a mountain range, these elements evoke pure, unadulterated awe.
They bypass our petty desires and direct the intellect cleanly and directly toward the omnipotent creator.
Let's look at the biological mechanics of the very first sign in verse 17. The camel, Alibal.
Classical scholars like Al-Razi and Al-Qurtubi spend pages marveling at the biological and behavioral paradox of this creature.
It is a massive, incredibly powerful, intimidating beast. Yet, it possesses an inherent, divinely programmed meekness that allows it to be haltered and led by a small child.
It is an absolute miracle of biological engineering.
It really is the ultimate all-terrain survival vehicle. It provides nutrient-dense milk, meat, reliable transport, heavy agricultural labor.
Even raw materials like hair and hide for constructing tents.
Right. It has a compartmentalized stomach and highly specialized red blood cells that allow it to consume massive amounts of water quickly and then endures severe dehydration for up to 10 days in the blistering sun.
It has specialized eyelids to block sandstorms and broad, flat footpads to prevent sinking into the dunes.
It is flawlessly adapted for an environment that actively tries to kill everything else.
But the most fascinating mechanism, and the one that ties directly back to our earlier discussion, is its diet.
Yes. The camel survives, and even thrives, by consuming the cheap, dry, heavily thorny plants of the desert.
It has incredibly thick, leathery, specialized papillae in its mouth and lips that allow it to crush and swallow sharp thorns without suffering lacerations or bleeding.
And this is where the theological symmetry of the Quran just blows my mind. We have to unpack this juxtaposition.
It's incredible.
Allah uses thorns, those very same vicious desert thorns, to sustain the camel, to give it life and energy in this worldly realm.
But in the next life, he uses thorns, the daris, to torment and punish the wretched in hell.
This demonstrates the absolute sovereign mastery of the Creator over cause and effect. The material object itself, the thorn, has no intrinsic power.
God can make a thorn a source of miraculous biological utility for a beast and simultaneously a source of agonizing futility for an arrogant human.
And the primary cognitive lesson the desert traveler is supposed to derive from the camel is absolute humility.
Right. If a biological machine of such immense physical magnitude, power, and complexity submits entirely to human will by the design of Allah, how can the fragile human being exhibit arrogance?
We are entirely dependent on Allah for every single breath, for the pumping of our heart, for every drop of water. How can we refuse to submit to divine law?
It's a staggering shift in perspective.
And once that humility is established by looking at the beast below us, the Quranic cinematic camera violently shifts our gaze in verses 18 and 19.
And at the sky, how it is raised, and at the mountains, how they are erected.
Sayyid Qutb, in his modern exegesis, Faizullah al-Quran, beautifully describes the visual movement of these verses.
Imagine your gaze sweeping upward to the boundless, terrifying expanse of the sky.
It is raised without any visible pillars, maintaining this flawless, delicate atmospheric equilibrium day after day, century after century.
And then the gaze sweeps back down to crash into the towering peaks of the mountains.
The physical realities of these creations are meant to cultivate specific psychological states in the believer.
The sky teaches us elevated aspirations. By pulling our focus upward to the infinite, it shrinks our petty, trivial terrestrial disputes.
It reminds us to direct our goals, our prayers, and our ultimate hopes upward toward the divine rather than getting bogged down in the mud of worldly anxiety.
And the mountains serve the exact opposite, yet complementary function.
They act as massive geological pegs. They stabilize the Earth's crust, preventing it from violently convulsing under our feet.
Precisely. And psychologically, they teach us steadfastness.
In the face of life's violent storms, shifting cultural trends, and personal tribulations, a believer's core principles must be like the mountain.
Deeply rooted, incredibly heavy, and completely unwavering.
And finally, our gaze is brought to rest on the immediate foundation in verse 20, and at the earth, how it is spread out.
Now, we absolutely must address a recurring modern issue here.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
I have seen critics, and even some well-meaning but confused readers, look at the Arabic word sutihat, which translates to spread out, flattened, or leveled.
And they attempt to argue that the Quran is promoting a flat earth cosmology.
It is a completely flawed, literalist reading of the text that ignores both linguistic context and historical scholarship.
Classical Islamic scholars dismantled this misconception many centuries ago.
Fakhr al-Din al-Razi, writing in the 12th century, long before the age of satellite imagery, explicitly clarifies in his Exegesis that this verse does not in any way imply a geologically flat or disc-shaped Earth.
He firmly acknowledged the spherical geometry of the planet. So how did a 12th century scholar reconcile the word flattened with a spherical globe?
Through the basic principles of geometry and scale.
Okay, break that down.
Razi explains that because the Earth's spherical radius is so unimaginably immense compared to the size of a human being, the localized surface inevitably appears completely flat and perfectly leveled to the observer walking upon it.
So the Quran is describing the phenomenological reality of human experience, not providing a macro-astronomical schematic.
It's focusing on how we interact with the environment.
Exactly, and Razi goes further to explain the theological purpose behind this physical reality. This localized leveling is an intentional, providential design by Allah to facilitate human civilization.
Imagine if the Earth were entirely composed of jagged vertical spikes or constantly shifting unstable slopes.
Agriculture would be physically impossible. The construction of complex cities, the establishment of vast trade routes, the simple act of a traveler walking from one well to another. None of it could happen if the earth wasn't spread out and smoothed for our use.
The lesson from the Earth is one of profound service and humility.
Just as the massive earth submits to being tread upon to facilitate life and ease for us, we should adopt a posture of humility and facilitate ease, growth, and benefit for the people around us.
So if we synthesize all of this, what does looking at a camel, the sky, mountains, and the dirt actually mean for you and me living in a highly digitized world?
This entire section is the ultimate divine antidote to modern heedlessness.
The state of spiritual coma that classical scholars call ghafla.
We live in a society that is chronically paralyzed by artificial synthetic constructs. We walk past literal miracles of biological engineering and cosmic architecture every single day.
The sky is above us. The earth is beneath us, but our eyes are aggressively glued to a 6-inch glowing screen.
We are obsessed with staring at synthetic metrics of success, our bank accounts, our follower counts, our corporate titles, while completely ignoring the physical universe, which the Quran insists is an open book of divine signs, or ayat.
The Quran is not asking for passive glances. It is demanding active, mindful, penetrating observation.
Observing nature in the Quranic paradigm isn't just a secular scientific endeavor confined to a laboratory.
It is a deeply spiritual, highly rational theological practice. It is the necessary intellectual bridge between the seen, material world of the present and the unseen, eschatological realities of the hereafter that we discussed in the first half of the surah.
If you can recognize the power required to engineer the camel and suspend the sky, the concept of a creator resurrecting you for judgment becomes entirely rational.
But this profound realization leads directly to a very real, very heavy human dilemma.
Once your eyes are open, once you clearly see these signs, once the sky and the mountains undeniably point you to the reality of the Creator, what is your responsibility toward other people?
What do you do when the people you love the most, or the people you are desperately trying to lead, look at those exact same signs and refuse to see anything but random chance?
This brings us to the final, incredibly powerful movement of Surah Al-Ghaashiya, verses 21 through 26.
Which clearly define the strict parameters of human agency and divine justice.
But transition here is crucial. It begins with a direct, uncompromising mandate to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, but by theological extension, it serves as the ultimate operating manual for all ethical leadership, parenting, and religious proselytization.
Verse 21 commands, "So remind, O Muhammad, you are only a reminder."
This explicitly establishes the core fundamental function of the prophetic office. He is an educator, a clarion warner, a compassionate guide.
But it's verse 22 where the immovable boundary is drawn in stone. You are not over them a controller.
The Arabic word used here is musaitir. What does it actually mean to be a musaitir?
Musaitir is a very heavy, structurally aggressive word. It denotes someone who dominates, who dictates from above, who forcefully manages the internal affairs of others, or who physically and psychologically compels compliance.
Ibn Kathir quotes the early companions, Ibn Abbas and Mujahid, who confirm that this verse means the prophet cannot force faith into the hearts of the people.
Nor is he ultimately accountable for the choices they make after the message has been clearly delivered.
I think we really need to bring in the brilliant framework of the scholar Ibn Taymiyyah here, because his conceptual breakdown of this dynamic is revolutionary.
Oh, absolutely. In his massive compendium, Majmu' al-Fatawa, he elaborates on this specific verse within the broader context of the oneness of lordship.
He explains that guidance is actually divided into two entirely distinct operational categories.
Yes. The first category is Hidayat al-Irshad. This translates to the guidance of information, clear direction, and warning.
This is exclusively the human domain. This is the act of pointing the way, laying out the arguments, and showing the evidence.
And then there's the second category, Hidayat al-Tawfiq. This is the ultimate guidance of the human heart.
This is the internal neurological and spiritual shift where a person actually accepts the truth and alters their inner state.
Ibn Taymiyyah rigorously argues that Hidayat al-Tawfiq is the exclusive, sovereign, untouchable domain of Allah alone.
I cannot emphasize enough how deeply liberating this theological concept is for the modern listener.
It relieves so much pressure.
Just think about the friction in your own life. Whether you are an agonizing parent staying up until 3:00 a.m. worrying sick about the destructive choices your teenager is making,
Or you're a frustrated manager trying to guide an unmotivated team.
or a community activist burning herself out fighting for social reform. A massive, disproportionate amount of human burnout, anxiety, and deep resentment comes from desperately trying to be a musaitir.
Trying to forcefully alter the internal state of autonomous human beings.
It is a crushing, fundamentally impossible psychological burden because you are attempting to exercise a power that doesn't belong to you.
Exactly. But the Quran intervenes and structurally relieves you of this impossible burden.
It explicitly tells you that your job is to be a clearly painted signpost, not a steering wheel. You cannot grab the wheel of someone else's life.
You provide the reminder, and you must do it with intellectual excellence, with deep compassion, and with unwavering consistency. But you absolutely cannot alter the heart.
Attempting coercion or manipulation breaches the divine framework of human free will.
This paradigm shift, the deep internalized realization that you are not a musaitir, allows you to foster vastly healthier relationships.
They become built on clarity, respect, and boundaries rather than toxic manipulation. And most importantly, it transfers the agonizing anxiety of the final outcome back to the omniscient domain of Allah.
We see this liberation beautifully embodied in early Islamic history. The historian al-Dahabi, in his biographical encyclopedia Siyar Alam al-Nubla, documents how the early generations of Muslims, the Salaf, operated in society.
They exerted tremendous, exhausting physical and intellectual effort in preaching, teaching, and embodying the truth through their character.
But they maintained this incredibly serene, stoic detachment from the results. They didn't fall into despair when people rejected them because they fundamentally understood that coercion is antithetical to sincere faith.
A forced heart is a hypocritical heart.
But the text doesn't let humanity off the hook. Just because human beings cannot force belief upon one another, that doesn't mean there are no consequences for rejecting the truth.
Verses 23 and 24 introduce a terrifying caveat. However, he who turns away and disbelieves, then Allah will punish him with the greatest punishment.
This instantly pulls us back to the eschatological terror we encountered at the very beginning of the surah.
But Nouman Ali Khan provides a highly critical linguistic and historical nuance here regarding the specific phrase, the greatest punishment, al-Adhab al-Akbar.
Because when a casual reader encounters that, the immediate reaction is panic. They think, does this apply to literally everyone who just didn't know any better?
Is this a generic blanket statement for anyone outside the fold?
Nouman Ali Khan clarifies that in its primary historical context, it is not a generic statement aimed at the ignorant or the unreached.
It refers specifically to a very distinct, highly culpable group of people. those who witnessed the absolute, undeniable physical manifestation of truth and still chose to turn their backs.
We are talking about the Quraysh leadership who lived alongside the Prophet Muhammad. They knew his flawless character for 40 years.
They observed world-breaking physical miracles like the splitting of the moon or the water flowing from his fingers.
They had the purest, most direct, uncorrupted access to divine evidence that any human being could possibly have.
And despite witnessing reality tear itself open to prove his prophethood, they stubbornly turned their backs.
And they didn't just walk away. They actively, violently became treacherous enemies of the truth, entirely out of sheer arrogance, bruised egos, and a desire to maintain their tribal economic supremacy.
Exactly. Their punishment is classified as the absolute greatest because their crime of rejection was of the absolute greatest magnitude.
It was committed against the greatest prophet, holding the greatest, final revelation after the proof had been made undeniably, physically manifest to them.
It is the ultimate crime of cosmic treason, and this leads us to the absolute, uncompromising finality of the surah.
The closing verses, 25 and 26, drop like an anvil. Indeed, to us is their return. Then indeed upon us is their account.
The Arabic phrasing here is structurally fascinating and carries so much weight.
Classical linguists and scholars like Al-Qurtubi and Al-Tabari point out the highly definitive, emphatic use of the grammatical particles here.
The verse uses inna, meaning indeed, verily, or without a shadow of a doubt,
And thumma, meaning then, indicating an inescapable chronological sequence. This grammatical structure is designed to heavily emphasize the absolute, inescapable reality of divine justice.
The two key functional words are ayyabahum, which translates to the return, and hisabahum, which means the account, the reckoning, or the final audit.
Humans are incredibly adept at evading worldly consequences. We see it every day. A criminal might successfully evade worldly authorities.
A corrupt politician might manipulate public opinion, hire the most expensive lawyers, leverage loopholes, or even convince themselves of their own twisted righteousness.
But the Ayah dictates an unavoidable gravitational trajectory back to the originator of the universe.
Death is not a cessation of existence. It is a guaranteed physical return to the jurisdiction of the Creator.
And the Hizbahum means that once that return occurs, every single hidden intention, every whispered slander, every stolen scent, every hidden tear is subjected to a total, flawless, inescapable divine audit.
If we look at this from the perspective of you, the listener today, navigating modern life, this isn't just a terrifying threat aimed at sinners. It is actually the ultimate moral and ethical anchor for the believer.
Just look at the reality of the world we inhabit. It is rife with deeply entrenched systemic injustice.
Political corruption thrives out in the open. War criminals die peacefully in their beds. People get away with terrible soul-crushing things.
And on the flip side, what about quiet virtue? The good deeds you do when absolutely nobody is looking.
The massive personal sacrifices you make for your family that go completely unthanked. The integrity you maintain at work when it costs you a promotion.
In this worldly life, that quiet virtue often goes entirely unrewarded, and sometimes it's even actively punished.
If your internal ethical framework relies solely on the expectation of worldly justice, you will inevitably fall into profound, paralyzing despair. The math of this world simply does not add up.
It doesn't. But the absolute guaranteed certainty of the Ayah and Hizbahum completely rewrites that math.
It ensures that no silent suffering is ever ignored, and no hidden corruption is ever overlooked. The universe is not a chaotic void.
Allah has exclusively taken it upon himself to audit the microscopic, atomic details of humanity's actions.
Knowing this, truly internalizing this, empowers you to act with supreme, unshakable integrity in the dark.
You can choose to be honest, courageous, and deeply virtuous, even in the total absence of worldly recognition or financial reward.
Because you know with absolute certainty that the audit is coming and the cosmic scales will be balanced perfectly.
It is the perfect conceptual capstone. It perfectly ties the entire thematic architecture of the Surah together.
It brilliantly balances the paralyzing fear of the overwhelming envelopment with the profound, soothing hope of the elevated gardens. And it grounds that entire emotional spectrum in the inescapable, objective reality of ultimate divine justice.
So as we bring this incredible deep dive to a close, let's just take a moment to synthesize the holistic, intellectual journey we've just taken through Surah Al-Ghaashiya.
We started by brutally shattering the fragile, comfortable illusion of worldly permanence with the Ghaashiya, the sudden, totalizing, overwhelming event that overwrites all of our daily anxieties.
We were then forced to deeply audit our own daily efforts, contrasting the exhausting, utterly futile labor of those disconnected from God with the deeply satisfying, eternally validated effort of those who submitted to Him.
We were then given a universally accessible, highly empirical teleological proof. We were commanded to step outside our synthetic lives and observe the biological miracle of the camel, the atmospheric equilibrium of the sky, the tectonic stability of the mountains, and the providential geometry of the earth.
We were grounded in epistemological humility, the realization that our human perspective is incredibly limited, and we are surrounded by the deliberate design of a creator.
And finally, we were freed from the crushing psychological anxiety of trying to forcefully control the behaviors and beliefs of others, realizing we're simply tasked with being clear, compassionate reminders.
While simultaneously, we anchored our own personal ethical conduct in the absolute, terrifying yet comforting certainty of the divine reckoning. It is a complete, impenetrable, utterly flawless worldview.
It is an infallible ethical compass, and quite frankly, it is a necessary neurological reset for the modern human psyche.
It truly, truly is.
And I want to leave you, the listener, with a final lingering thought that builds on everything we've unpacked today. I want you to think about the deeply cyclic, almost cinematic nature of this surah.
We started with a sudden, overwhelming envelopment, the blanket thrown over reality.
Then the text opened our eyes and had us look around at the fleeting marvels of physical creation, the camel munching on thorns, the majestic mountains, the vast sky, and then we ended with the inescapable gravitational return.
The profound reality you have to sit with is this. Everything you observe around you in this physical universe, no matter how majestic, how solid, or how important it feels right now, will eventually perish.
But your personal, individual trajectory toward the Creator is permanent. It is the only thing that lasts. So look at your life right now. Look at your calendar, your bank account, your stress levels. Look at what you are exhausting yourself for. What exactly are you spending your weary labor on today?
A question every single one of us must eventually answer.
Jazakallah khair. May Allah reward you with goodness for spending your valuable time listening to us.